Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are around the world, around the state, around the country, around the city. My name is Dr. Theresa J. Canada. I'm your host for the Silk Stocking Sisters podcast. And today we have another special guest. As you all know, all my guests are special. And we're going to talk about something very close to my heart, which is related to education. So we have today Dr. Deidre B. Flowers. She's an education historian who researches and writes about Black women's education, activism, and their experiences in education settings, which really ties into some of my background in a sense, and basically what the talk about this particular podcast is. So her research, and she has significant amount of research that's relevant. Her research examines as the activism and leadership of efforts to improve the quality of life for Black Americans during the 20th century, which is right on point. So Dr. Flowers has publications which include the launching of the Students Sit-In Movement, the role of Black women at Bennett College, and A School for Modern Times, Mildred Johnson, the founding of the Modern School of Harlem, which we're going to be focusing on for this particular episode. So I just want to say basically her background. She and I have a lot in common. It's interesting enough because she basically published, something about the modern school in ABWE's essay project. And I also am an early member of ABWE, and I also received an award from ABWE. I was an outstanding member of ABWE years ago. So that's another thing that we have in common. So the other thing is that she also is a member of various organizations and has presented at various organizations like ASALA's, the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, and the AERA, which is the American Association of, how can I forget this, American Education Research Association, and also the Southern Association of Women Historians. So she is significantly engaged in research about women's issues, about education, about activism and leadership efforts, which is something I think is pertinent for my audience to hear about. So the other thing that's most significant is that she's a lifelong member of Harlem, New York City. Go figure, right? We exist. Yes, absolutely. And she's also a graduate of Teachers College. She's 2017 graduate of Teachers College and the History and Education program. That's where she received her doctorate. And she also had earned her bachelor's degree from Hampton University and a master's in public administration from Syracuse University. So we have that in common. She's a Syracuse University person. I'm a Rochester person. So we're both upstate New York. Okay. We're both Teachers College. So I got TC degree. I have a Rochester degree. So we have a lot of things in common. So this is going to be very interesting. I'll say this, welcome, Dr. Flowers.
Thank you.
Okay. So this is going to be a really interesting dialogue because I want to talk about the modern school and your experiences and so forth and so on. But also I want to talk about how we met. For those of you who don't know, people say I'm all over the place. Yes, I am. I'm also a Harlem resident. I should say lifelong, but you leave and you come back. But I grew up in Harlem, and I think it's really so interesting that when I met her, we were on a tour. And I want you to share a little bit about that. Maybe if I can get Karen Taylor on this podcast, it would help as well. But the fact is, I was really fascinated when we were on the tour of Harlem. And one of the things was the Modern School, one of the locations of the Modern School. So Dr. Flowers was talking about, that was her piece and part of the tour. And that's how I met her on this tour. So when I asked her, I said, well, would you mind being on my podcast to talk about the Modern School? She said, sure. So because I had heard of the Modern School, but I think I knew someone who had graduated from it, but I didn't know that much about it. So I thought that this would be something to share and talk about the issues of the difference between private schools and public schools for Black residents in Harlem. So having said that, Dr. Flowers, can you talk a little bit about your experience as a student at the Modern School? Tell us about the Modern School, your experience as a student, and then, reflect on Ms. Johnson.
Okay. So I would not have ended up at the Modern School had it not been for my mother. She was born and raised in the South, migrated north at the tail end of the Great Migration.
Migration, yes, that's
Yeah.
okay. We can't leave that out. Definitely, those great migration. I know that's and people tell people about what it was the migration about. Because I mean, I
Well,
know.
after I'm going to say after the end of the Civil War, African Americans started in the early 20th century leaving the South because the South was not giving them what they wanted in terms of opportunities. My mother was one of about 9 children born and raised in Georgia, and she left Georgia probably in the early to mid 1960s. I was born and raised here. And I know that in the beginning, she put me into a public school. And she had heard one of our neighbors in the building speaking about the modern school. And because she had attended public schools in the South, never attended a desegregated school in the South. Only one of my aunts did out of all of my grandmother's 9 children. My mother saw the opportunity and she took the opportunity to put me there. It never occurred to me that this type of schooling was different than what other students were getting in public schools. My mom wanted me to have the opportunities that she did not have when she was growing up in the South. And so she put me there. And what I think of when I think of the modern school, the first thing I always think of is those beautiful big red doors, which are no longer red because the building no longer exists as the modern school. It has another function now. So I was there from first to 6th grade. Right. And then I went to another school. And as I was thinking about this, I realized that in my education process, I have gone to 2 schools that are historically Black, the modern school and my undergraduate institution. And the other schools that I went to were not predominantly Black, but there were Black students in it. So as I was there, I mean, I think of all of the fun things that we did, the singing, the dancing, the artwork that we did. But what really comes across to me as I researched on Mildred Johnson is how much she actually cared for her students and how much she wanted us to succeed as students and be able to go out into society and make a contribution to it. And so I guess you can say my interest in her is my way of giving back. I remember when I think I had finished Syracuse, my first round of graduate school, and I went back to the school to visit, and I was like, oh my God, why is everything so small? Because all the people that go there were small, right? I was no longer their size. And another thing that hit me as I was thinking of the schools that I had gone to, I went to visit Mother Cabrini as well. And I walked into a room and one of the girls said, oh, I remember you, Deidre. And I'm like, well, I've been gone for a little while and you remember me. Mother Cabrini went from 6th grade to 12th grade. So we were there for 6 years. Most of the students who wanted to stay. And it was an all-girl Catholic school. And it was just good to be able to see people remembered me and they were still there. You know, we were being kids doing what we normally do.
But pause. Tell the audience, where was Mother Cabrini?
Mother Cabrini is located in Washington Heights. It is right at the tip.
New York City, because people.
Yes, New York City.
Okay.
In New York City. And it's right at the tip of Fort Tryon Park. So if you took the number 4 bus from end to end, which I used to do because my mom worked at Gimbel's, and I used to go from my school all the way down to her job on the bus.
Wow.
So that was one of the things that really made me think of it. I've been up there. The school is no longer Mother Cabrini. It is now another school. I believe it's a charter school that is in the space now. And many of our teachers that were there when I was there have gone on. Some of them have passed on, but I do hear one of our principals is still alive and still with the sisters at Mother Cabrini.
Okay. Interesting. See, that was something that we didn't know about. Great. And also, since you mentioned Gimbel's, tell people what was Gimbel's.
Oh, Gimbel's was a department store. I don't remember how old it was when it closed. My mother worked there up until Probably my sophomore or junior year of high school.
Okay. Okay.
Maybe up to the freshman year.
Oh,
Um, and she worked in the key punch department. She worked in the key punch department, punching the key, the transactions. I remember doing some work when I was out of school and my mother had to take me to work with her because there was no one to keep me in the house. Um, and I also ended up working for my aunt that way at the Museum of the City of New York, if you're aware of that. It's right on Fifth
yes.
Avenue there.
Yes.
Um,
But that was then. You could take your children to work. You can't do that now.
no,
No,
no, now,
that's
but
right. That's interesting.
when I first when I first started working after I got out of Syracuse, we had take your daughter to work day, and then they started take your child to work day. And I think about it, I had little sisters from Catholic Big Brothers that I worked with then, and I'm just thinking about it. Just didn't occur to me that people could not take their kids to work.
Right, right. I know, but this says a lot about. See, this is why I like to talk about different areas and not have a script per se for my interviews, because it leads to other kind of conversation and shares information about other things that people need to know about and learn about. So thank you so much for sharing that information, because I too, and that may be another episode, I'll talk about my experience of going to work with a parent. It wasn't my mom, it was my father. That's another story. But my point, I'm just saying to you that these also experiences that probably impacted your education exposure as well, doesn't it?
It does indeed. I mean, most of my aunts and uncles had migrated to New York, and in some way, because my mom was a single mom, I was shifted, especially in the summers. But during the school year, I might have been shifted around, and a different aunt or uncle had responsible for making sure that I got my homework done, or that I got to school, or that I got home safely. So there was just a lot going on, and having your family together, it's helpful for all. Each one takes an opportunity to support the other. So yeah, it's something that I appreciate. And I mean, now
Now it's interesting, right? It's
it's
interesting.
interesting because
That doesn't happen that much now.
no, it doesn't. And for me, what's really missing is, like, my mom is my grandmother's last living child. And so all of the uncles and aunts, I no longer have. I can't pick up a phone and call them. But I remember them being a part of my life and making sure that I was doing what I should have been doing, getting my grades. Getting
Okay,
my
okay,
grades.
that was cute. That was huge. That was huge. All right, so basically, let's talk a little bit about did you live near the Modern School? Tell us about the history of the Modern School, so people don't know what that's about. Let's give us the history a little bit of the Modern School and when it was founded, and basically when did it finally close, and then we'll lead into Miss Johnson.
We can't start it without talking about Miss Mildred Johnson. Mildred Johnson was placed into the Modern School. There was if I remember correctly, her uncle had a connection there, and so she was able to go to the school as a student, and she went through the entirety of ethical culture school. And at the end of it, they had a teacher training program, a TTD.
Mm-hmm.
Some Yeah. Um, and Mildred wanted to go there because she had been there all of her life, and there had been no other Black teachers in the school. So she basically talked to the administrators in charge and finagled her way into getting into the school. I believe it was a 3-year school. And when she was nearing the end, it was very difficult for them to place her because they said Black women don't teach in private schools in New York City.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
I didn't
that's
know.
very interesting.
Okay.
And, she tried her best over the summer between starting that year and being finished with her high school education. She thought about what she would do if they could not find a place for her. So she decided that she would make her own school.
Mm. Can you give me some dates here?
Oh, she started the school officially in 1934.
Mm-hmm.
Started in the rectory of St. Philip's Episcopal Church on
31st Street.
33rd or 32nd. I always
Okay.
get
Okay. Yeah.
confused between the two, but it's
Yeah.
one of those two. And she started with students who were children of her friends. She had friends who were older than her. So they had children and they brought them to her, and she used them to do her student teaching. One of her teachers from Ethical Culture School, from the Ethical Culture School, came and observed her. She had support from one of the administrators there to help purchase furniture, and she charged a modest tuition for students there. So she had 5 students at the beginning. No,
Okay.
excuse me, I think it was 8 students at the beginning. And as her population grew, she had to change venues because they were running out of space. So she moved into several different places in Harlem. One of them was in her father's home up on 154th Street, I think it was.
Is that the
there-
east side or west side?
West side. Everything was on the west side.
Okay. 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 And
On the west.
and mind the audience understand this is all in Harlem, New York City.
So yes, I don't know if I said this, but it was in the years following the Depression when she
Yes.
started her school.
Yes.
And that's very important because during that period, you know that there was hardship for American citizens. But when you think of African Americans, they were hit much harder with the Depression than any
Right.
other community of people in New York City.
Okay. That's true. That's true. Not that it's any different now.
No, it's not.
Okay. Not any different now.
Lots of people are struggling now as well.
Exactly. So then, that's the significance when I learned about. I didn't know about her at all. I mean, I knew about the Modern School, and I knew it existed, but I didn't know the history of it, and so forth and so on. And so, can you talk a little bit about now the difference between the experiences, of Black students, because you attended the school, who attended private versus the public schools during the time that you attended the Modern School? What do you think? Is there any conversation you can share with us about how you felt being a student at the Modern School as opposed to some of your friends, maybe in the neighborhood, who did not attend Modern School?
I would say that when I was young, when I first went to the school, I don't think I had any idea of the difference between a public school and a private school. Some of my friends or people in the neighborhood made me more aware of it when I was probably in my latter years there, and even when I was in high school at Mother Cabrini. I had one student who actually called me white girl because of, and I'm not even that fair skinned, but because I went to a private school and I was learning these other things that gives you a broader worldview.
Yes.
And I didn't quite know what to say. I was like, okay, well, if that's what you want to call me, go ahead. And I went right on to my little private school. And then I went right on to my little Catholic school, which,
Right.
it's at Mother Cabrini, we had a variety of students, much more than you saw at the Modern School, which
Right.
wasn't a bad thing. I was immersed in people who, in a community of people who looked like me at the Modern School. And when I went to Mother Cabrini, there was just an extension of the diversity of students in which
Okay.
I engaged with. And I appreciated that. And literally yesterday I was at my mom's house looking for stuff for me. And I found my high school uniform, the band outfit. I found a whole bunch of stuff and I brought it home. Yeah, I did. I brought it home. I was like, I'm not leaving it this time.
Oh my goodness.
But particularly in New York City, when there is so much diversity, our schools should reflect that.
Okay.
Private
Okay.
schools, you may not be able to do anything about because people who have been there for years and who donate money to the school do have influence on what the school will do and who the school will allow into it, right? But when you're in a public school,
Everybody.
basically it's everybody. Everybody goes in.
Right.
It wasn't something I thought about when I was at the Modern School. I just knew that my mom wanted me there.
Okay. Okay.
And
That's
then
what I want to know. That's why I want to get that perspective. Because see, the significant thing about this was that because part of the discussion that I have here about this difference between segregated versus desegregation and the whole process of schoolings. And I just want people to understand that attending, basically, the modern school was pretty much an all-Black school, correct? Okay.
Pretty much.
All right. So I'm trying to people to understand. I mean, looking at your background and what you've accomplished in your life is an example of the excellence that can come out of an all-Black school. And I wanted to emphasize that. That's why I asked you to come on and talk about that, because I want people to know that, it doesn't have to be an integrated school for a person to be able to excel. Okay. So what are your thoughts about that?
I agree. It doesn't have to be a certain type of school for students to excel. I mean, I've been in and out of a couple of places, in a couple of schools this year, and I'm thinking about it. I have friends who did go to public schools after the modern school, and depending on where you go, it helps. I mean, well, it helps you figure out exactly what you're going to do. Either you're going to be a scholar or you're not going to be a scholar. And
Right.
sometimes I think it may be that students don't know where to go to get their help so that they can do better. Sometimes students may not want to do better,
Right.
So those are things that we need to think of, but
Right.
there should always be help or assistance available to students to get them where they want to go. I taught in a high school last year, 23, 24. And I remember students took a quiz and they didn't do so great. And I was like, well, do you want to take a look at this again? And then I said, well, have you looked? I will not give you an answer, but I will ask you what you have and haven't done. And if you have a question still after you sit back and look at it again, come back to me and we'll talk. And I'll find a way to help them think it through themselves, but not give them an answer, because you got to exercise those little brain cells and get everything going so that you can see how things fit together.
That's not typical of a public school setting. You know that, right?
I know. But
Okay.
I went to Mildred School. That's why I do that.
All right, but I'm just saying to you, that says a lot about the importance. See, because what I'm trying to get expose the audience to understand that experiences, the whole thing about, it was better when schools were, it was bad, the schools were segregated. I'm saying there are things that happen in all Black schools. I have to say, my mother was from the South as well, and she also migrated, and she and my father both, they met in New York City. But my point I'm saying to you, though, is that I've experienced, when I had relatives, I would be there in the summertime with relatives in the South, and the schools began sooner than they began in New York City.
Mhm.
So I'm still there with them, and their school started. So that time, they were all Black schools, and I was able to attend because they would let you come in and visit. They don't do that now. I'm sure they couldn't do it later. But the point is, I experienced that for just like maybe a week every summer that we were down, my sister and I both. And it was amazing, the kind of structure, what they shared, and the excellence that was expected of students. And, it was just amazing. Something I returned to my school. I'm like, so why don't we talk? And I understood that. I think it was about, the quality of what teachers and the administrators at those Black schools, they wanted the best. They wanted their students to be the best and to excel. And I felt like, how come we don't have that in one of my schools? Okay. My best teacher was when I was attended school in Harlem up until the third grade, that the best that was my first Black teacher, my third grade class. And it just gave me a sense of, yes. Okay. And she was tough. And I looked up to her. That's why I think about my dissertation, which talks about role models and mentors, women in higher education in particular. But I'm thinking, you had Black teachers where you were. You didn't just have all white teachers. And I know for a fact that the relationships were kind of different. And there was, in public schools, because I attended all public schools except for college. All my college education was private institutions. But I'm just saying as a whole. But I did attend a school that was like a private school from fourth, fifth, sixth grade. And I saw the difference. So I wanted to get your perspective of how your experience was and how you were able to get to this point in your life where you were at this level. Do you think that you would have been where you are had you attended regular private schools in Harlem during that era?
Regular private schools in Harlem?
No, regular public schools in Harlem.
Public schools in Harlem. Okay. I don't know. I don't know. I just know that my mother was in charge of me and her siblings were there backing her up. And this is what Geraldine wanted to do with her daughter.
Okay.
And I think it was definitely very clear. It's like I think she felt a way about what she experienced in the South. And she's like, no, I don't want this for my daughter. Something very different. And this is what it's going to be. Yeah.
And
I appreciate it.
how did she find Miss Johnson? How did she hear about the Modern School? Do you know?
One of our neighbors
Oh, really?
in the building. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. So
Yeah.
that's what happened. But see, that's the community again. That's the
Mhm.
community.
Yes.
Okay. Which is also lacking now. Am I correct?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically you've thought several things about community, family, okay. Um, and also you had classmates were similarly minded, correct?
Yes. I actually have a classmate whose father went to the Modern School.
There you go.
Yes. And he is still alive. And she and her sister are taking care of him.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, yeah, and I think of it because there were things I didn't know about the Modern School until I started writing about her. And when I spoke to my classmate, she was like, "Oh, you know that she had a camp as well." And that has found its way into the article that I wrote. But it's like, wait a minute, they had horses there. Wait a minute. She started with a small piece of land and then it expanded and expanded. And my husband, because of the pandemic, my husband and I went searching for the place.
Right.
And we finally found the place. Someone else clearly owns the property now,
Where
but
was it
it was,
located? Where was it located? Where is it?
oh God, it's upstate New York. It's not far. It's maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours drive up. I can't remember the name of the location,
But it's
but it's,
Mhm.
yeah, there's some stuff that you can find in the article. But I cannot remember the name of it because we didn't have, well, the location of it because we didn't have that at the beginning when I started. And I think it was something we found after it went to publication.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, well, I really, I'm not going to keep you too long. I just wanted you to share this information. I think this has been a wonderful discussion, and it may be leading people to do their own research about the Modern School and Miss Mildred Johnson and her historic venture. Now, when does the school close? Do you have any idea?
1999, under her leadership, there were some teachers who wanted to keep the school running. So they took over the name, the Modern School. They were in a different location, not in the 152nd Street location. I think they were over on Riverside Drive.
Okay.
I was not aware of that until, oh gosh, probably sometime when I was writing the article. And I do plan to make it a book. I have my stuff right here next to me, which I'll start working on as soon as we're done.
That's an academic for you.
Yeah. It's been here and I've been trying to get to it, but so many things back and forth. But I'm going to sit down and I'm going to make time for that. And I do want to write again on the camp that she had. Because
We're going to have you back then.
Yeah.
Have you back. This is fascinating. Well, thank you. So can you give us some final words in terms of your thoughts about, how it was then and how it is now? Do you have any thoughts about what you think you see in the future? Do you have any ideas about what could happen if there were places like that now for students?
I think that we have way too many students in classrooms. And I'm thinking of public schools because I've seen some private schools and they have smaller counts where a teacher can actually focus on what the needs are of the students in their classrooms.
Right.
I like the fact that there are integrated classrooms. And when I say integrated, I mean there are students with disabilities.
Different levels.
Right. In the regular classroom, and they have supports for that. But when you've got 25 to 30 kids in a class, it makes it very, very difficult to provide them what they need. And I mean, I would not be that person because I was not a special ed teacher, but knowing that even your students who we assume have no challenges, they need assistance and reassurance of what it is that they are doing in the classroom or trying to learn in the classroom and how to focus. Because I mean, I know I was an only child, so I had a lot of focus. But if you've got maybe 3 children in your household and they're different ages, well, the oldest one is usually responsible if mom and dad are not there because they're at work trying to care for the family. But they still need their support. They aren't quite adults, but we have to help them make their advance in education. So that's what I'm concerned about. I will say that I worked in a school in the spring, and there was one young man in one of the classes who acted a certain way every day. And on my last day in the classroom, in that particular classroom, I actually was able to work with him so that on something that he was interested in. And it happened to be all of the sign language letters. We were missing one. And he was like, no, we're gonna put them all down on the floor. We're going to lay them out. I'm going to find everything. And then he went through the process, and I didn't really need to help him, of doing all of the signs. And that kept him calm, and that made him happy. Right. And that, for me, that's making me think of how Mildred worked with children where they were.
Yes, that's it.
This is where this kid is. Yeah, this is what we're going to do, even though it's not what the rest of the class is doing. I'm over here with this person, and the other teachers are in there with him. We have to find ways to meet our students and help them.
Excellent. Yes. Point. Excellent point. I like that. Thank you for sharing that information. Thank you for being here and talking about this. I think this is fabulous information to share, and so people can understand, and we can understand that we all need to have the best for our children, no matter what the circumstances are. Correct?
Yeah. Okay. Indeed.
Thank you. All right. Thank you so much for being here. And I wanted to thank the audience for being here and listening to these wonderful stories and historical information that we've shared today, especially with Dr. Flowers. And I'll see you next time on the next episode of the Silk Stocking Sisters. Bye now.